Welcome to this week's episode of the Good Luck Club podcast. Our mission here is to help 1 million people start a business of their own. We believe of all our heart, no one is born anything, not a doctor, not a lawyer. You can be trained to be an entrepreneur. There are many different types of doctors. There are many different types of entrepreneurs. It's not a question of are you an entrepreneur? It's really just a question of what type are you and what help do you need to achieve your potential. On today's podcast, I'm very excited to have an incredible entrepreneur, Maria Hatzistefanis. She's the founder of Rodial and a best-selling author. I absolutely love her. She's so brilliant. You're going to love the podcast today and her sharings. Just before I bring her on to tell you all that she knows in business, I just want to do a big shout out. We're here also trying to support libraries. We think libraries are the future. They're in danger of becoming extinct in the UK, and we want to bring them back as entrepreneurial hubs. If this mission resonates with you or you want to help in any way, resurrect your local library, reach out to us. We have funding and support for you, so let us know. I want to welcome Maria onto the podcast. Hello and welcome.
Hi, Simon. Thanks for having me today. I'm just so excited to get out of my work from home lockdown situation and speak to you.
Oh, well, thank you so much for giving the time. And I've been reading all about you. It's just amazing what you've achieved. But would you mind telling the audience a little bit about who you are and your journey?
So I was always passionate about fashion and beauty. I got a part-time job in 17 magazine back in Greece, where I'm from, while I was at uni. I did that for a little bit. I got my teeth stuck into beauty and fashion, but then I was really curious about business. So I continued my studies. I studied business, moved to New York, and then of all places, I ended up getting a job in the finance world, first in New York and then moved to London. So here I am, a girl passionate about style and beauty and fashion, being thrown into the corporate world of finance. And at the beginning, it was super exciting. I was getting involved in deals and learning a lot and living the jet set lifestyle. But then very quickly, the excitement wore off. And a couple of years into being in banking, I got called into the boardroom and I got fired. And you know what? That was devastating for me because that was my first big job. But at the same time, this is the shock that I needed to sit down and think, what is it that I want to do with my life? And finance was definitely not my calling. So I went back to what I was really passionate about, and beauty is one of my passions. So that was the point that I decided to launch my brand, Rodial. So I started back in the day, that was over 18 years ago, from a back room at home. And I've been slowly growing the business. And 18 years later, Rodial is available in 35 countries and more than 22,000 stores worldwide, with some of our best-selling products used by celebrities. And names of our products are snake serum, dragon's blood, that have been revolutionizing the beauty industry. So it's been a journey, to say the least.
It's a fascinating story, and I'm really interested in those early days because for a lot of our listeners, they're looking to start businesses. Maybe they can't find a job right now, or they've been fired as well. You know, how did you come about with this brilliant idea? What was the process? Did you just come to you, or was it over time? How did it happen?
So back in the day when I was looking into the beauty industry, everything was very basic. The only products that you could get, and remember this is over 18 years ago, a basic cleansing soap, a toner, and a basic moisturizer for all skin types. And my idea was there must be something a little bit more targeted that we can do. And take every single skincare need or issue that we may have, from fine lines to pigmentation to sunspots to anything that you can even think about, stretch marks, and then come up with a specific product to address the need. And back in the day, that was revolutionary. We were one of the first brands to be offering targeted treatments to specific skin concerns. So I researched the industry, and I was I was very passionate to come up with a solution to a problem and fill a gap in the market.
I think anyone listening, they think about products and how expensive it is to make them, and then of course building a brand and selling it. What was the first few steps? Did you have to raise money? Did you just start selling products online and see how it went? How did you get it up and out? Because that's the struggle for a lot of people.
Well, before you even start to raise money, you need to have everything in place. So the first thing I did was I got on a flight to Italy. And I went to this trade show in Bologna that's called Cosmoprof. This is the biggest beauty show in the world. And there you find all the suppliers that you may ever want for a beauty brand, from packaging to manufacturers to designers to anything, registration companies, everything. So here I am in Bologna with a carry-on trolley. So I was going up and down that show for 48 hours. I sat down, I had hundreds of meetings. I took lots of leaflets with me, and that's how it all started. Then I came back to London. I screened through and settled on who I was interested in, and followed up with calls, with meetings, until I was at a place that I figured it all out, that this is going to be my packaging supplier, this is my contract manufacturer, my lab. So it took me a bit of research to put all my resources together, but that was the first point.
Were you never tempted to go back and get a job as you're building? Were there moments of doubt?
I was very young at the time. I was in my early 20s, so I didn't really have a lot of responsibilities in my life. So for me, it was part taking risks and part being naive and thinking, you know what, I have nothing to lose. I don't have a mortgage. I don't have a family to support. It's just me. And yes, I may be able to go and get a salary, but it's more interesting and more exciting to try to start a business. If things fall apart and I'll give myself a couple of years, I can always go back and find a job, no big deal. So it was at that time that I felt comfortable in not having the security of a full-time job.
It's fascinating to understand the psyche, because for a lot of people, they are, again, they think they've got a lot to lose, right? And it's interesting to have the mindset you've got, which is, I think I want my audience to pick up on that. Especially when you're young, realize that you actually don't have responsibilities as much as you think you might, but you actually, can go out there and take some risk. I think it's really important at that point. Your family entrepreneurial? Where did you get this entrepreneurial gene from? Were your mother and father quite entrepreneurial?
Not at all. My parents are both teachers back in Greece, and they've always been through the public system. So when they graduated from school, they got a job as a teacher, and then you are guaranteed a job for life. So not only did I not come from a family of entrepreneurs, but I also was coming from a family of people working as civil servants back in Greece. So I definitely didn't have the gene. And it's kind of interesting. I talk about it in both of my books, that I don't think that you need to be born an entrepreneur. I mean, equally, there's families of entrepreneurs that their kids become entrepreneurs and the grandchildren, everyone gets that gene. But in my case, it was something that I discovered, I figured out. And even, if you were to ask me, when you ask a 13-year-old, what do you want to be? I had no idea what an entrepreneur does. And I had no idea this would be in the cards for me. I just fell into it, I guess.
Very interesting. And I think I sometimes describe the entrepreneurial piece as a muscle in your brain, and that you wake up and then you have to exercise, right? But when you go through this process, did you think at the beginning about getting a co-founder, for example? Was it lonely at the beginning, or did you have a lot of support?
I didn't think about getting a co-founder just because I was taking a lot of points back at the day. So whether I liked it or not, I did have a couple of years of finance and strategy and building financial models. I did have that experience. I also had the sensibility of the beauty industry and style. So throughout, the 4 or 5 years going back before I started the business, I had collected a lot of skills that I needed to start a business. But what I did, and I did that very early on, I realized that the part that I didn't have was the sales part. How do you sell your product? How do you go to the buyers and present it? How do you organize a sales team if that's what you need? So very early on, I brought on a senior sales manager in my team that would bring a skill that I wasn't familiar with. So for me, and this is advice for all entrepreneurs out there, yes, you may have a co-founder that you have complementary skills with, but equally, those skills that you're missing could be a consultant that you get, or could be someone that you hire. You don't necessarily need to be looking for a co-founder. And I did it by getting consultants and hiring people.
I think that's a really good point, because a lot of people do feel like they need a co-founder, they can't start. And I think the way you're describing the process is completely correct. You can hire the talent that you need, but it must also have not been easy hiring a very good person in the early days of the business. I mean, it sounds like probably a bit of convincing, a bit of salesmanship you probably had to apply to get them on board.
It's hard because when you have great people in the market and you are a small brand, first of all, you can't offer them the packages that the big companies are offering, whether that's a pension plan or private health insurance or lots of perks that they get, or even the structure of working in a big corporation with a lot more security. But then you find those people that may not be the perfect candidate on paper, but you hire because the energy is there, the passion is there. And in a way, coming to work for you at such an early stage gives them that flavor of being an entrepreneur themselves without having to take the risk personally. So it is a certain type of candidate that would flourish with this opportunity, but it's not for everyone. And over the years, I've tried to recruit people who looked amazing on paper and coming from big organizations, and they just didn't want to take the risk. But I feel that sometimes, especially at the beginning, the energy and the passion and sharing the vision is more important than the skills on paper.
Again, great insight that I think only experienced entrepreneurs can share. This concept of energy and passion as being as important as the CV experience. Because again, a lot of people out there think they don't have the experience. We speak to a lot of university students, for example, don't have any experience. So I think your message of energy and passion can trump experience. And so visionaries like yourself will then hire those people. So I think that's really, really important. People pick up on that. Was there a lucky break in your business?
You know what? I don't think that there was a single point in my business that luck had anything to do with it. And if you look at my journey, I moved to the UK. I'm an immigrant, and everything that I've done, I've had to prove myself time after time, because not only you're new in being an entrepreneur, but also I haven't gone to school in this country, and I don't have contacts, or I don't have people to support me in any way that I knew from school. So everything that I've done, I've had to work harder than anyone else to convince. So I don't see luck as being having anything to do with what I achieved. I guess the only lucky thing is that I have a very supportive family. I have a very supportive husband, because that's the most important thing, that when you are on a journey that you take a lot of risks, you need to make sure that the people around you are supportive and they let you do what you want to do. And from that point of view, I've always had support. So that's probably the only lucky area in my life.
Yeah, and again, such a important point there, and we're getting a bit of feedback at your end. I don't know if that's us, but the partner piece you're mentioning there is another crucial thing. I like people that are setting out on a journey of entrepreneurship or struggling right now. I think your partner can make it all much easier for an entrepreneur. I'm only successful because my partner supported me. I'm convinced of it. If she hadn't given me the time to work as hard as I'd worked and understood who I was, then that's a big struggle for people. I mean, this takes us to this cliche work-life balance question, really. I mean, what do you think about work-life balance as a concept?
So work-life balance is a tough one, because my husband is the CFO in our business. And it's very hard because the working day ends, and then would sit down to have dinner or watch something on TV. And then he would say, oh, this and that and the other, what do you think about this? Or this happened at work today. And, at the beginning I was engaging, but now what I do, I have to say, listen, let's just talk about this tomorrow. This is our private time and we need to have a little bit of time off work. So I find while it's great to have a family member or your partner work in the same business, equally it can take over. And I feel, especially during lockdown, when you work together, you live together, I had to set boundaries. So this is the working day, and past a certain point, yes, we can talk about business, but then you also need to separate those two. So, it's not ideal, but, figuring it out.
I love your honesty around this subject. I think for a lot of people that struggle with it, you're super successful, super positive, and everything you put out there, I think, is really, really kind of bright and happy. But it's nice to hear that you struggle with this stuff too. I think for a lot of people listening, that will really appeal, because I have the same problem. I actually worked with my wife for 10 years, day in, day out, 7 days a week, 18 hours a day, and it was awesome. But there was a stage where it became like, let's just separate this now. We work and we live together, let's keep it separate. But I think it's hard for people who don't have their partners in their businesses, for example. They have the opposite problem. I think there's a disconnect, right? They can't share their problems with someone, for example. But yeah, it's really interesting, and I really appreciate you being so honest about it, because I think for a lot of people it will be a relief that they have a similar problem managing work-life balance. And one of my favorite quotes ever from one of my guests on the podcast was that life's like living on a wobbly stool. I guess it's a permanent balance, right? Of getting it right. But lockdown doesn't help. Totally true. I was looking back, you did an MBA at Columbia Business School. Was your education a big part of how you think today, or would you recommend people do things like that if they can? What's your view on things like that?
I mean, that my degree, my MBA, it really opened my eyes into the business world, into the finance world, and this is the reason that I got my first job in finance with a bank called Salomon Brothers. But to be super transparent, I don't think that what I learned during this degree has helped me in any way to being an entrepreneur. I didn't take any entrepreneurial classes at the time, just because this wasn't something that I was even considering. So I feel that I learned more along the way, and by trialing new things, by experimenting, by taking risks. Some of them paid off, some of them I learned from and moved on. So yeah, it was great that I was able to do that business degree, but equally having your own business, it's a very different ball game. You have to be a lot more street smart than what you're actually taught at university.
That's an interesting question, isn't it? Because they pitch themselves as business schools. So it's definitely an interesting topic. A lot of people ask us here whether or not they should go and take an MBA of sorts. So it's interesting to hear your view. I think also just looking at your history, I mean, you've got 2 children. And I know 15 and 17 years old, and it's interesting to kind of look back at the history. So your business is 5 or 6 years old when you have your first son, right?
Yeah. So first I've had the business, and then I had my son.
And so
it was a year or two after, 2 years, I think. Yeah.
What was that like? I mean, I know myself, I really struggle. Even today, doing this podcast, I'm interviewing Maria. She's going to share her knowledge with the world and help people. And my son is literally like, come to the park, Daddy, it's snowing today. And so I really find it hard. You know, I want to go to the park and play in the snow with him, but I also feel, I guess, an obligation to give back and help and do this interview today, of course, because it's lined up with you. How did you manage that? How do you balance that? A lot of our listeners have kids. You know, is there any thoughts on this you have?
I have a whole chapter about combining work and family on my second book, Make It Happen. And the chapter, interestingly, is called Pay the Cost of Being the Boss. So when I had my first son, and the business was going for about a couple of years, the good thing was that the business was still small. So I did have responsibilities, but not a lot, nowhere near the responsibilities that I have now, 18 plus years later. I was very strict with this is my time that I have to focus on work, and this is my time that I can focus on my son. So obviously during those times you have to depend on other people, whether that's a partner, whether that's a relative, whether that's an au pair. So I was quite structured with my day. And also, I like to be 100% focused on what I do. So I can't really go through 8 hours of kind of being at work while kind of being with my son. It would have to be 4 hours at work and 4 hours with my son, or whatever combination worked for me. But from the very beginning, I was very clear about separating those two. And any time I could give to my business, I would give to my business and be there 100%. And I feel it's really important. If you try to do both equally at the same time all day long, I think there's always the guilt that you're not putting enough of the focus on your work and equally not putting your focus on your family. So I have a system that works for me. It's all in my book, How to Make It Happen. And it's all about prioritizing and just being focused on what you do, being in the moment, I guess.
Well, the links to Maria's books is in the broadcast below, guys. So feel free to go and grab those, because they are incredible books with incredible insights. I think this whole concept of I guess balancing it out, it does sound like segmentation is the answer. I think that's definitely a theme I hear from a lot of successful people, that you've got to actually allocate time to be with your family and allocate time for your business. And if you try to do both, sometimes it can go crazy. You can go crazy. But I do appreciate, again, the honesty and the insight on it. Do you think, considering you're in such a competitive business today, how do you stay innovative? Clearly, when you started the business 18 years ago, you were very ahead of your time and pioneering, but a lot of people have copied you since. So how do you keep it fresh? How do you stay innovative?
You know what? It's a current question, actually, because we've totally changed the way that we look at innovation since the lockdown compared to how we used to innovate before. And back in the day, it would be myself and my team. We would look at the trends and we would identify a need and come up with products. Also, all the time researching for ingredients. I would travel the world. I'm in Korea, let's say, and looking at new ingredients Americans and bringing them back to the UK. But the thing that we've seen with lockdown, and I'm, as you know, I'm very active on social media, especially on Instagram through my at Mrs. Rodial account. And since the lockdown, I've started going on daily and doing daily chats and daily tutorials, which is something I've never done in my life because I always saw myself as a business person rather than a beauty expert. But I had to do it because that's the only way I could communicate with our audience. And since I started doing that, I've been getting so much feedback and I've been getting so many ideas on what people actually want. So it's not just about, oh, let's just come up with another moisturizer because it's trendy. This is what our customers are asking right now. This is a need that's obviously not covered by us or another brand. Let's just, this is the problem. How do we solve it? Let's just bring the ingredients and make it happen. So since the lockdown, we are listening a lot more. And I feel that the products that we will develop going forward are going to be more successful because they're coming from a need as we're listening to our customers. So yeah, things have changed a lot. And at the end of the day, it's always putting the customer first and what is it that she wants or he wants and making that happen.
It's a very good tip, actually, in this day and age. I was like the Henry Ford quote. He used to, if I asked my customers what they want, they would have said a faster horse. But he didn't have social media. And I think now the world is moving so fast and there's so much out there listening to your customers and the way that you are doing. Your social media is awesome. I just followed you on TikTok, actually. And I know you're always building out new platforms, but your Instagram is informative and personal. And I really like this point you're making. And I hope people who are building businesses are picking up on it. Don't just necessarily sit in a vacuum creating things. Do ask customers. It's so key, I think, in today's world. So great insight. Do you think your business going forward? Clearly, you've diversified. You've got your own books, of course. You've done a podcast in the past. Do you see yourself? You on LinkedIn it says overnight success media. So is moving to a media business model, or is that a completely new venture that you're pushing?
So yeah, as you mentioned, I've published 2 books: How to Be an Overnight Success, How to Make It Happen. I have a podcast called Overnight Success. There was a time that I was focusing a lot on all that and doing book tours internationally, promoting my book. So that is still going on, and it's sort of my personal passion because as you know, books and podcasts. You wouldn't know because you're a lot more professional than I am on the podcast side of things, but they're not necessarily big revenue generators, but they're my personal passion. I want to share what I know with everyone else, even if that means that we just break even. But I'm always into challenging myself and finding new ways of entertaining and educating and connecting with my audience. And it's funny that you mentioned TikTok. I've only been on TikTok for about 6 months. I was very reluctant to join. I joined, and now I'm figuring it out. And someone was asking me the other day, what's your aim on TikTok? And I know a lot of people go very niche, and it's sort of every TikTok, it's all about education, or every TikTok, it's about, makeup. And my vision with all my Instagram platforms, I guess, but especially with TikTok, is to make it like a magazine. So you go one day, you watch a beauty tutorial. You go next day, you watch how to put together a fashion outfit. That's another passion of mine. The next day you go, you find motivation, or the next time you find like a silly TikTok because it's trending on the platform. And for me, it's all about moving where the popular culture moves, and being part of that, and being part of that narrative, rather than sort of isolate myself and say, oh, I'm only going to be doing books or podcasts. It's where things are moving. And for me, especially being in this business for so many years, is going to where the audience goes and being part of any revolution that's happening. So that's important for me.
It's really interesting. Well, you've got 74,000 followers on TikTok. Seeing as it seems like it's a side hobby for you, it's doing quite well. I enjoy your TikToks, but I think it's definitely an interesting point. Andreessen Horowitz, for my listeners that don't know it, one of the most successful investment companies in the world, they described themselves recently as a media company that monetizes itself through VC investing, which I thought was really interesting. The kind of it's a personal brand, I guess, is the hot subject right now, but you've got a personal brand as the founder of the businesses and because of your books, but in a way the media side is also, I guess, stretching out and pushing further your personal brand story, right?
Absolutely. And also when you've been doing the same job for 18 plus years now, which I have been running the same business. Obviously, every year it's different and every year has new challenges and growth and all that. But you need to have something else that's going on where I keep being creative and I get out of my comfort zone and I do things that still challenge me. And I think it's very important for anyone who's been doing the same thing for a long time to find areas that they can self-develop. And for me, it's all about, and I know, you were going to ask me what do you think success feels like. For me, it's waking up every day and being excited for what I do and being creative and learning. And like even recently, I just started a photography course on I've taken this course by Greg Williams, and I'm on YouTube sort of exploring how do I take better pictures. So for me, being successful is, yes, being successful and making the sales targets and all that, but also being creative and pushing the boundaries and learning every single day.
It's a really interesting point. My personal limit is 10 years doing the same thing. I ran a company called Fluid for 10 years, and then I basically had to bring someone else in to run it. We actually sold it to PwC recently, but I think that's really interesting as well, accepting that you might love what you've got and what you've built, but you also need to do other things, explore other parts of your skill set, right? So it's really, really good point.
Yeah.
Really, really love that point. Thanks for sharing. Do you think that you've touched on this the success piece? I mean, do you look at the business and think, right, what is the future for my business? What is success 1 year, 5 years, 10 years from now? I mean, there is a trend I've noticed, and I've fallen into the trend myself, of selling the company. I'm sure you've been approached a million times. What makes you not sell it? What would make you look to expand it? What's the plan?
It's that's a question that I get all the time, especially when I first started. Sort of, what's your plan? Have you started the company Rodial to and Nip Fab to sell it and then move on? And I mean, the answer is I am not a serial entrepreneur, and I started this business because I have this passion for bringing something exciting out of the world, and I have a passion for being creative. If I was a serial entrepreneur, I would have sold a while ago. Over the years, we have been in talks on and off with potential investors, some of the big names, as you can imagine. But then after starting those conversations, and I realized that, I won't be able to do things the way I love to do things, and my company would change dramatically. I was never ready for that. I was never ready to sell and then be an employee and then, maybe eventually walk out. So there is no big plan right now. The plan is we continue to be independent. We don't have external investment. As long as the company is profitable and we can keep it going without the need for external investment, and while I'm still excited to be involved in the business, we're going to keep it private and kind of run it the way we run it. If one day I wake up and I feel, I'm not feeling it anymore, I'm not excited anymore, and I don't really care if someone comes in and changes everything, then that will probably be the point that we'll think about getting someone else to come in. But until then, there is no big plan.
I think, again, this is such an important thing you're talking about here. I want the audience to pick up on. And I sold my company, and sometimes I have regrets about it. I miss my team. I miss what I built. And I built new things now, but I still sometimes think, should I have sold it? And I think that culture out there of build a company and sell it is a bit of a misleading view on entrepreneurship. I actually love your view on entrepreneurship. You did it because you love it, you enjoy it, you want it to do well, you're passionate about it. That is the best reason to start a business and the best reason to keep a business. I've interviewed two people recently. Nick Jenkins, who's the founder of Moonpig, he did sell his company, and he also mentioned Nick Wheeler and his wife, who starting White Company, and talked about how much he admired them because they built this incredible business and they haven't raised any money and they never want to sell it. The compound that creates, I think, is quite fascinating. So, and definitely as an investor, when I hear people want to build it and sell it, I worry. I much rather invest in people like you that are just like, I just love this. It has to be, it has to come to the world. I just want to keep doing it. That is a real business, actually. I think what you've mentioned there is gold, and not enough people talk about it, because there's so many people come on, of course, me included, talking about selling our companies as if that's success. That is not success necessarily. I think what you're doing is success, actually. Building something you love, and that's the core. That doesn't mean, say, like you said, I like your point. Maybe, who knows, one day when you don't like it anymore or you don't feel it anymore, then that's fine, yeah. But I think that's really important for people to pick up on. Can I just ask you, you've written 2 books, you've got a third one coming, I know. How do you write these books? I know a lot of people, again, want to write books. How have you managed to do it, considering you're running incredible businesses at the same time?
The first book was the starting point, and then you kind of get the formula a little bit, if that makes sense. So what I have been doing for a few years now is I journal a lot. So if something crazy happened at work, if I was facing a challenge, I would sit down and write about it, then think how I handled it, and how, if this came to me a month later with more clear head, how I would have handled it. So I started journaling and having notes and keeping notes, or I would write a speech, and I collected all those pieces together. And I thought, I was getting a lot of requests on Instagram, on Mrs. Rodial, how do you start the business? What's your advice? And I thought, what? I have all those notes. I'll put them together, give them a storyline, and just put it together as the book. And this way, I can help a lot more entrepreneurs more collectively, rather than just answering a quick question on an Instagram comment. And that's how it started. So there wasn't a big plan. It all came from a need, and I think there's a massive need from coming from a lot of young people who are considering a career of starting their own business. But I also feel there's not enough out there. There are a lot of business books, but sometimes even when I was reading them, they're not relatable, and you want to be able to relate. And someone who is in the beauty business and who shares what they've gone through, there's not like a huge amount of that. So I felt it was needed. And as you've said, How to Be an Overnight Success, it has been a bestseller, and lots of people related to it. And still, after 3 years of publishing it, still people are buying it and leaving me messages how it transformed their business and their life. So that's how it happened. It wasn't a big plan for me to be a writer. It just happened.
Was it easy to get it out there in the world? I mean, making it is one thing, creating it, which the journal idea is brilliant, by the way. But other than actually writing it, a lot of people struggle with publishing it. Did you find that easy, or was it?
It wasn't easy at all. And then with every book is a new journey. So it doesn't even mean that because you've published one, the next book is guaranteed. You always have to convince people and publishers. With my first book, it was a bit of a struggle, because I would go to publishers and say, I'm sorry, we're only publishing books by celebrities, unless you're in Love Island or The Apprentice, we're not interested in you. So I found there's quite a lot of this culture of the publishers really want to go for well-known names and celebrities and politicians and all that. So I just happened to meet up, and this is without an agent, without anyone, someone at the time who just published what is that, the name of that book? They were the original publishers of Girl Boss. And when they saw my book, they kind of thought, this is perfect. This is the time. They also published Arianna Huffington's books. So I think it was the right time, the right moment. They were looking for a book like mine for female entrepreneurs. And the first book happened. So yeah, it wasn't easy. And it was probably going around in circles for about 9 months to find a publisher. But equally, you know what, if I didn't find a publisher, I would probably self-publish, because I really, and the book, I don't know if people know it, it's never really a massive revenue making exercise. You know, if you sell it to a publisher, you get some royalties, but it's really not, you know, it can't pay my bills, nowhere near. It's more about giving my knowledge and sharing and connecting with people. But yeah, it's not easy publishing a book.
Well, I've got a book coming out too, so yeah, totally. It's actually a bit broken, the system, actually, the self-publishing, the kind of going via a publisher. It's a very interesting model. But thank you for sharing your story about it. If you were, I always love framing life as a book. If you are a book, what an interesting book you'd be, first of all. But what chapter are you on, and what's the title of the chapter you're on now, do you think?
So it's the title of my second book, which is Make It Happen, because this year, more than ever, would have to make it happen considering the circumstances. And the chapter is how to get out of my comfort zone. And it's interesting, when I was setting my New Year's resolutions back in January 2020, I was like, you know, I'm going to travel the world and do my book launches and just experience life to the fullest and go out more, because I'm not that social at all. So I had all these big plans for 2020. And then, March 2020, lockdown happened. So how do you get out of your comfort zone when you're sitting indoors, and how do you change your life? But honestly, this year has been transformational. It made me think about my business in a very different way. Historically, Rodial has been a wholesale-based business. So we're selling to the likes of Harrods, Selfridges, Harvey Nichols, and then suddenly none of that is available. So we had to very quickly transform to direct to consumer, as people say, which is a fancy way of saying, you know, growing our website sales. And the way that I work with my teams, and, you know, being a 20-year-old business, it was all about being in the office, working from home. What is this? You know, new brands, I understand they've had it, but with us, it was a very traditional model of how we worked. And we had to change everything. Even the way that I was coming on Instagram stories every day, and still going as much as I can, and talking to people and connecting with our consumer. I've done things this year that I've gone out of my comfort zone so much, but in a very different way than I always thought getting out of your comfort zone is. So, yeah, it's been a great year. It's been a learning curve on so many levels, but I also feel we're in a much better place now, and we're in control of our revenue.
A trend I've noticed with all of your messages are, you know, like when you said at the beginning of the podcast about being fired and how it was your big shot in life, your big chance because you were fired. I feel like that frame of mind, that mindset that successful entrepreneurs have, I'd love my audience to grab that. You know, even now you're saying this difficult time, and it is such a difficult time. No one's had it easy, and but yet, you know, getting out your comfort zone, improving yourself. Your message is still very much like it's an opportunity. The difficult time is an opportunity, and so I really love that message, and just want to highlight it, Maria. Really, really love the way you frame things. So thanks for that. I've taken up a lot of your time, and I know you have a lot of things going on. So I want to thank you for coming on. I have one last question just to kind of end the podcast on a slightly lighter note. And if you went back to your younger self and gave some advice, what would it be?
It's all going to be okay at the end. I was worried sick about everything, every small thing that happened to me, to my business, to my life. And, it all works for the best at the end. So yeah, it all works out at the end. Don't worry. It's going to be okay. That's my advice.
It's giving me goosebumps. Actually, that message, I think it's a really nice message, and I hope my listeners feel the energy on that. It's all going to be okay. Great way to end the podcast. Thank you so much, Maria. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Simon. That was fun.
It was really fun. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Good Luck Club podcast. I hope you found the insights that Maria has shared useful. I know I did. If you did find anything she had to say insightful, please do me a favour. Go through to her social media and say thank you. Give her a like or a follow. Not only will she appreciate it, frankly, you'll be inspired by her content every single day that either makes you smile or gives you knowledge. I hope you have enjoyed today's podcast. If you have, feel free to share it with anyone out there that's either looking to start a business and needs a bit of encouragement and support, or who has started a business and maybe can pick up on some of what Maria said today to push through the more difficult moments. We know you have 812,000 podcasts today that you could be listening to, and you take the time to listen to ours, and we feel incredibly lucky.